Now that we have our project set up and we understand what's going to happen, let's get going on starting to lay out our website. Now, like I talked about, we have some common areas that's going to be consistent with all the other web pages. That is the navigation up here at the top. We have our home, which is going to have different words, but the position is going to stay about the same. And we have the footer. And those three areas are, pretty much guaranteed to look the same throughout all the pages. As we can go through here, navigation looks the same and the about's there, footer's the same. So we're going to look at this and how to lay it out. Now, I want to let you know that all of these are going to be their own HTML pages. So what I mean by that is the about will have its own HTML products and contact. It's not going to be dynamic. Dynamic meaning that when I click on about, the content in the middle of the page goes away and then is reloaded, and the nav and all that stuff is not reloaded. Okay, that's dynamic. That is a little bit more complex, but for now we're going to stick with just individual text files or HTML files. So let's start talking about it. The one thing I like to do before I ever get designing, or not designing, but laying out my HTML is I like to think about how things are laid out. So we're going to begin with the navigation up at the top. So as I look at the navigation, we're going to notice that it has the links on the left-hand side and the logo or the soap factory on the right-hand side. So if I lay that out, I can almost look, and I'm going to draw this out here, and that is going to be the nav, okay? And it is pretty much going to be 100% of the page, okay? So we can actually start writing this. That's 100% wide, okay? So put a W there. And then if we think about how this is laid out, we can start grouping things a little bit together. So we know we have the logo over here, okay? And we can give that a class of logo. All right, so that's the way it should work. If we click on this in our XD file, we can see that it's 280 pixels wide and basically 40 pixels tall. So we can also put wide 280 and height, and then we put basically 40 pixels. Okay, so I like doing this before I get going. It makes it a lot better. So then I look at the links over here on the side, and as we can go, I'm just going to put that as links. So we have a nav, and inside of this, we're going to create a class called links. All right, and then over here, it's hard to determine how wide that is, okay? But there's some ways that we can figure this out. And one of those is to do a little math from this. So if we look at the X position, which is 60, that means there are 60 pixels between this edge and here. This is also 88 pixels wide. So if you think of just say 90, that would mean that to the edge here would be 150, okay? And then if we look at where the X value is here, it's a 199. So it's about 50 pixels in between both of these. So here we can just literally say 50 pixels padding. Okay, so we can get that laid out a little bit more. All right, and that means that there's 50 here, here, and here. So we got that. The next thing we need to do is decide how tall the navigation is. Now, if you want to know how tall this is, we're going to click on this image and we're going to look at the Y. So the Y goes from the top down to the top of this one, and it's 155. So we know that the navigation is going to be 155 pixels tall. All right, so we know that our HTML is going to have a nav, okay? And I'm just going to write this out here. We know it's going to have a nav. And the classes underneath there is going to be width of 100%. Okay, the height is going to be 155 pixels, right? And we're not worried about background color because it's white on the background. Now, what we do need to be worried about is that it has two nested divs inside of it. So underneath that as well, we're going to have links as a class, okay? And we know that links is going to have a height of 40 pixels. Okay, and then we're going to let it go width as far as we want. We also know that the padding in between the anchor tags, so the links anchors, is going to be 50, the padding is going to be 50 pixels. And then also the logo, we have that in there as well. And I'm just going to put a little dot here to show us that it's a class, and logo. And we also know the width is 280 pixels and the height is going to be 40 pixels. So we already know this before it ever begins. And then we can come back and get the color for this. So let's jump into our code editor and start coding. So at the top of our page, again, if you kept that piece of paper and you've written it down, and here I'm just going to keep flashing back to what we have, we know that we have a navigation. So we're going to put a nav. Okay. Now inside of this nav, we know that we're going to have two divs. One is going to be called links. One is going to be called logo. So we're going to do this div, or you can do a section. Now I'm going to use Emmet shortcuts here. And the way this works is you can type div, you hit a dot, which stands for class. So if you know how a class begins with in CSS, it's a dot. If we were going to use an ID, it would be a hashtag here. So I'm going to use a dot, and I want to call this links because that's going to be our class name. And you'll notice that and then I hit tab, and you notice that automatically generated a div with a class name of links. The next thing we're going to have is a div with a class of logo. Okay, so now we actually have the links and the logo div inside of there. Okay, so inside of links though, we have how many links inside there? We're going to jump back and look. We actually have 4: home, about, products, and contact. Let's go ahead and add those. So right now we need 4 anchor tags. So we're going to type in A asterisk and then 4. Now what this does is it's Emmet, and basically we're telling it we want an anchor tag and we want it times 4. And if you hit tab, it scaffolds out 4 anchor tags and it puts our cursor in the middle of the href. Now we know that our home page is always called index. So I'm just going to go index.html, and don't hit anything at this point. If you hit tab, it automatically moves to the middle of your anchor tag so you can type the name, which we want it to be home. If you hit tab again, it automatically goes down to the next anchor tag's href. So here we're going to call this, let's go over to our XD file, and it's about. So we're going to say about.html, hit tab, and then this is about. And then hit tab again, and this is contact, or actually I think it's products. Products.html, hit tab, and then you put products in here. Hit tab again, and you're taken to the href, and you're going to hit contact.html and hit contact. So we save that. And one thing that's nice about this is when we do a save as for the rest of these pages, all of our links are automatically created for us. We never have to change this. Okay, so now that we have all those anchor tags in there, we need to start previewing this and make sure that it's working correctly. Now, if you've installed that extension Live Server, okay, that was in that description, okay, you can right click on this page and you'll notice it says open with Live Server, and that's what we want to do. So we're going to hit that, and you'll notice that it opens up your Soap Factory home, and you'll notice that we actually have some links up there at the top. It's not styled yet, but we'll get to that. Okay, so the next thing is to actually create the logo. So we're going to put the logo in there, and down here it is really just the Soap Factory. And if we need to add anything to that, which we can, okay, we can change it. So let's go preview that. And now I'm going to go ahead and X out of that a little bit. Now if you save it, it should automatically refresh over on your page. And you'll notice that now we have the Soap Factory under there. All right, let's get some more stuff styled. So if we look at our piece of paper that we wrote on earlier, and we go to the top, the navigation is 100% wide. Okay, so I'm going to start styling this, and we have a style sheet right here. Okay, I'm going to close down, I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to close down my project so we can see more of it. I'm going to open that over here. Okay, so now we have basically our HTML, and you can see all of that right here. And I have everything I need, so I don't need to touch the HTML anymore. I'm going to stay right here in my CSS. So the first thing we need to do is style the navigation. And remember that piece of paper? navigation is 100% wide, and the height of it is 155 pixels. So we're going to say height 155. Okay, and we're just going to give it a background color right now just so we can see what it looks like. So I'm going to save that, jump over to my browser, and you'll notice that it's pretty big. It's up there, and it's aqua. Okay, so that's great. It looks a little bit too big for my navigation. Okay, so I'm going to come back to the XD, and when we look at the Y, I think that's a little bit too big here. So if we click on this, if you notice that the height of that is 165, so maybe that is. Let's play it and see. Okay, that's pretty big. Okay, when we look at it. So I'm going to close that down. So we're going to leave it at 155 right now. Let's go ahead and fix some other things. One, I need these to be laid out like the Soap Factory to be on the right side of this, of these links. Let's fix that real quick. So in order to do that, and the reason why we created two divs, now a div is a block level element, which means that it takes up the entire line, and that's the reason why logo is below links. We need to style these and get these to lay out. And we don't need to do anything with those links or logo yet. Inside of nav, I'm going to put display flex. And now let's take a look at what happens. Now they're stacked side by side, which is really nice because that's exactly the way we want it. Now notice that display flex actually took those two block level elements and moved them side by side. So it's exactly what we want. The next thing we want to do is get them to go farther apart. So we're going to put justify content. Okay, and we want space between. Now, what ends up happening that, I'm going to close this down because that's really on one line here. There we go. Space between really just takes the two divs that we have, the logo and the links, figures out how much space is between them, puts the links on the left edge, the logo on the right edge, and puts all that space in the middle. So let's look at what it looks like. And that's exactly what we want. Left edge, right edge. Okay, we're going to come back and we need to align them in the middle. So that's exactly what we're going to do. And that is called align items. And we're just going to center them. And yes, you guessed it, it centered them vertically up and down. Now you're going to say, well, yeah, but we have space on the inside or on the inside of the navigation, right? So I'm going to go back to our XD file. And if you look at where home is 60 pixels from the left edge. X, remember, is horizontal, Y is vertical. So it's 60 pixels. If we look at the Soap Factory, it's going to be roughly around 60 pixels too from that edge. So what we have to do is, on our nav, there's a couple ways. One, we can put padding on it. So remember, just the word padding is a shorthand, and it requires 4 properties: top, right, bottom, left. So we want to apply it to the left and the right. So we're going to add no padding to the top and the bottom. And it would look something like this, 60 pixels. Now because we only put 2 and it requires 4, it will actually take these 2 and then duplicate them again. So it would really looks like this. Okay, so now we added padding to the inside of our nav. Let's take a look at that. So now you'll see that we have some space here. And that's exactly where we're going. Okay, so it's starting to look a little bit more like our navigation. Okay, now if we start looking at our piece of paper again, okay, so we're going to jump back to our piece of paper, and we have the links have a 50 pixel padding on them. All right, and also it's 40 pixels high. All right, we're really not going to worry about the height yet. Okay, but we are going to worry about the padding. So we're going to come over here and nav. Okay, and now we're going to go nav. Okay, and then we have one called links. And then we're going to target the anchor tag that's inside of links. And the one thing that we're going to do is put padding right on them. And remember, going back to our paper, the padding is 50 pixels in between them. Okay, so now we have navigation, links, we've targeted, this is called a compound selector. We've targeted all the anchor tags inside of the class links that's inside of the nav. Let's take a look and see if it spread them out. And wow, look at that, it really did. We're going to change the color, take the underline away, okay, and then look at the XD for the color preference. Okay, so now we're going to say text decoration is none. Okay, that takes the underline off. Now we need to know the color, and we're going to go back to the XD file for that. And if I click on that, notice how the fill color is all just black here, okay? But you'll notice what one is active, and that's home. Okay, and notice that Roboto is the font for this. Okay, and we're going to add that here in just a minute. It will look a lot better. All right, so, and nowhere up here do we have it. Okay, so let's go ahead and fix some of this other size. The color's already black, but one is active. I'm going to create a class underneath here, and I'm just going to call this nav and active. Okay, and now this active class is all it's going to do is just change the color. And we're going to change the color to this home color, and you'll see what I'm getting at. So I click on that, I grab the hex code, and we're just going to put that right here. And I save it. The next is I want to apply that class of active to the home. Okay, and now it should give it the color of this pink. Let's see what happens. You'll notice that now it is a different color. Okay, but notice that the color didn't change on these. So we're going to have to change those. So we're going to come up here and we're going to say color. And remember that those were black. Okay, and we can use 3 instead of 6. Okay, and now they're black. Oh, but the home changed. So this is where we need to really understand how deep we need to go to change and add a class. Notice that over here, I'm targeting the nav links A, and then down here, I'm targeting the nav just active. Okay, so we're going to get more specific here. We're going to say nav, and then we're going to do links, and then we're going to do A, and then any class basically that's on the A is going to be active. So now, notice there's no space here. Okay. So that's because a class of active on an anchor tag, which is that. Now let's go back and see what it looks like. Now we've really targeted home here, okay? We will do this for each page that is active, right? You can also have a hover if you wanted to. And in order to do that, I'm just going to copy this selector. And we're just going to put a colon. This is called a pseudo class, and we're going to call it hover. And the only thing we're going to do is add this color right here inside of this hover. Now basically this is a pseudo class in the anchor tag, okay? And we come over here and you'll notice that when we hover over one of those, okay, it will change color. And that's what this did. So now we have an active link, which means the active page. We have the anchor tag styled the way we need it to, okay? And we have the hover. Let's go to the XD file, okay, and see, okay, that's the same color. Okay, the font is 30, it's bold, and it's Roboto. We're going to add that Roboto here in a second. Okay, so again, we have this laid out. We have the soap factory. This is starting to really work for us. Let's just change the color in the soap factory. Get it close. I'm going to go back to our code. Remember, that's logo. And again, nav.logo. Okay, and now we're just going to add that color in there and change the color of the soap factory. Let's go take a look and see if it did. And it did. Okay, and now we can change the font a little bit. So if you remember, the font size of that was 30 pixels. We're just going to add that as well. And there it is. Now, when we add the Roboto text, this is going to change a lot for us. Also, if we look at the XD file and figure out the size of these, okay, this text is also 30 and it's light. So we're going to add font size of 30 in the anchor tags. If we come back to our browser and look, now you'll see that they're really big up here at the top. Now this is going to be extremely large, and a lot of times you wouldn't see these being 30. Okay, so we would probably have to adjust this a little bit. And I want to just do this right now just so you can see how it lays out. In the next video, we're going to add the font and we're going to adjust this to make it look more realistic, because this is really big on my browser right now. It should probably be about half the size. Okay, but we're just basing this on the actual XD, right? So this looks really good. We've created our nav. And as you can see, by laying this out on a piece of paper first, we were able to knock out our CSS relatively quick. I mean, in no time at all. And that's because we went back to the paper. So in the next video, we're going to add the font and get our navigation looking correctly and start adding the left-hand header. Okay, so let's get started on that.